The gospel text of today is taken from the Gospel of John chapter 11 verses 45 to 57. John chapter 11 is a very famous chapter in John because it contains the miracle of the raising of Lazarus. Jesus was told at the beginning of chapter 11 that his friend Lazarus was ill. The name Lazarus means God helps. God comes to the aid. And even though the name meant God helps, Jesus stays back where he is and does not rush to heal Lazarus. And there is a reason for this, because Jesus is not merely a healer. Jesus is not merely an exorcist. Jesus is not merely a miracle worker, but Jesus is God who can even raise the dead. So much after Lazarus has died, Jesus goes to the place where Lazarus is buried and draws Lazarus out of the tomb. Lazarus lives again on this earth because of the intervention of Jesus. Obviously, this is an enormous miracle. This is a stupendous miracle, and the people who witnessed it and those who heard about it are all stunned. And John tells us at the beginning of today's text that it was because of this that many people began to now believe in Jesus. They recognized that Jesus was extraordinary. They recognized that Jesus had miraculous powers. And so while they began to believe in him, it is very clear that their faith still needs to be deepened. It is yet a superficial faith, a faith which bases itself on signs. And Jesus refuses to give a sign in order for a person to have faith. The reason why he raised Lazarus from the dead is because it was the need of the hour, not to impress people, not to draw people to him. And yet, there are his opponents who are jealous. And the high priest, speaking for all his opponents, makes a prophecy. And the prophecy is, in today's text, that one man must die for the people. What does this mean? It means two things. First, on the surface level, the high priest and those who were Jesus' adversaries were concerned about what Jesus was doing. They did not want to draw attention to themselves because the Romans had occupied Jerusalem, the Romans had occupied that territory, and they did not want the Romans to come and inquire, to come and investigate, and to come and create problems for them in the temple. And that is why the high priest, who represents all the adversaries of Jesus, want Jesus to be silent, want Jesus to go away, want Jesus to move into oblivion. On the deeper level, however, the high priest makes a prophecy which even he is not aware. When he says one man must die for the people, he does not know. He is unaware that Jesus will indeed die and will save the whole world. Not simply a small group of people, not simply a larger majority of people, but he will save the whole world through his death and through his resurrection. So even though he is unaware, the prophecy of the high priest did come true. When Jesus hears of this plot to kill him, he does not go with bravado. Jesus does not look for trouble. Jesus is not a sadist. He would escape trouble if he could. However, when the time would come, he would stand up to injustice. He would stand up to untruth. He would stand up to darkness. He would stand up to his opponents. Now, however, is not the time. And that is why Jesus moves away when he hears of this threat, because in John very clearly, God and God alone determines the hour. And because that hour determined by God has not yet come, Jesus moves to Ephraim, and there he makes a reflection once again on his mission and who he is and what he must do. In his reflection, he realizes very clearly that he has to go ahead with this mission, no matter what the opposition might be. And Jesus continues his mission as he comes for the feast of the Passover to Jerusalem, before which he is killed, and through his death and resurrection saves the world. The gospel text of today is inviting us to make a reflection on ourselves and to ask ourselves what our response is when we are faced with the truth. Do we stand up for the truth? Do we stand up for our principles and our values, or do we back out because of fear? Jesus never backed away because of fear, and invites us also through the gospel text of today to be fearless, to realize that even though it might not seem to be at this moment, but truth will always overcome untruth. Light will always overcome darkness, and life will always overcome death. When you are in a dilemma today, will you stand up fearlessly for the truth?